Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome to the Farmer's Table. My name is Jess and I'm so glad to have you here in my kitchen today where I am getting ready to prepare a dinner to take over to some friend's house. One of our really good friends lost his dad this last week, and when that happens, you know, to someone in your community, I like to be able to step in and bring a meal and, you know, share some bit of care with them because it's just such a hard place to be in. It can be a little hard sometimes for me to do that just because my weeks are usually pretty slammed. So usually what I try to do when an occasion like this arises is I try to make something that I can essentially make dinner for another family and my family at the same time, get them ready and cook the other family's meals, take them and leave the meal here for my family to be able to eat for dinner. So today I am making lasagna with garlic knots, and I'm gonna go pull some stuff out of the garden, the high tunnel, and put together some sort of wintry salad. Lasagna is one of those things that I have kind of like a spectrum of lasagnas that I cook. The most involved being one where I make all the pasta from scratch, all of the cheese from scratch, obviously, you know, the sauce we make, and then the meat is grown on our farm. I mean, like, I can make like an extremely hands-on lasagna. Of course, it takes a lot longer time than I have today. So today I'm making like a much more basic lasagna with purchased pasta and, you know, cheese that I bought from the store. It's still really, really good. It's still a very good lasagna. Lasagna is not something that I have a written recipe for, but I want to encourage you that you don't actually have to nail ratios on lasagna for it to still be really good. Today I'm making I think this is like a 9x9 pan, and then I'm also making this 9x13 pan. Like I said, I'm making dinner for another family and for my family. I've got my pan on the stove, cast iron pan, and I'm going to cook meat, mix that with the red sauce. Separately, I'll mix together my cheese and egg mixture, and then we'll layer those together in a pan. Super easy. First, I need to start my garlic knots. So to make garlic knots, I actually use the same bread recipe that I make sandwich loaves out of. I have a video showing that whole thing, but I will put a link to the recipe. The only difference is for that, I usually do some sort of neutral fat or oil, and in the garlic knots, I actually use olive oil because I want the olive oil flavor, since I'm going to season these kind of Italian with garlic and butter and all that. So in my mixer, which I have right here, I'm going to mix 3 cups of flour. This is whole wheat flour that I'm using. It's not freshly milled, but this is a flour that I was buying before I started milling my own flour, and I really just need to use it up before it goes bad. I need 2.5 teaspoons salt added in here, and then 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. And I need 1/4 cup of honey, which you could put sugar in this, but I think honey is a nice complement to the garlic and butter. It's not gonna be super pronounced. They're not gonna taste super sweet or anything. I just sneeze and fit. One of my favorite like afternoon teas during this time of year is holy basil and rose hot, which is a splash of cream in it. It's so good. It's very floral and makes me think of the garden. Now we're gonna mix in 2 3/4 cups warm water and our 1/4 cup of oil. I'm gonna turn that off and we just let it set for like 10 minutes, which is going to help that yeast kind of wake up. All right, I'm gonna take a second to drink my tea and chat while I wait for that bread to be ready to move on to the next step. So I ran into the grocery store the other day. We were out in town and, you know, I needed a couple of things, and I walked past a shelf in the store that had like these fresh brioche buns, like hot dog buns or whatever. I haven't bought store-bought bread to speak of in quite a while now. Like, that was one of the things that we like drew a line in the sand and said, like, we're not doing this. Like, this is something we're just going to hold the discipline and make our bread products at home, simply because they're so expensive and there's so many things in them that in order to avoid the ingredients, you have to buy like much more expensive products. But anyway, just like a basic brioche buns in the bakery section of the grocery store was $7. And I was like, my goodness, that's incentive enough. You know, today, making lasagnas and taking a salad, bread is just a nice touch to go with that. Truly, the cost of this, especially considering I buy things like flour and yeast in bulk, is nominal compared to what it would cost to get something even remotely like this from the store. And this will be better because it's homemade. If you are looking to like get the bang for your buck, if you're looking to figure out like what can I start making from scratch to really make ends meet at the grocery store, as things are getting, you know, really hard to make ends meet, the bread products are definitely a really great place to start. If you're buying any sort of like frozen bread product to go with meals, if you're buying anything out of the fresh bakery, you can definitely offset the cost by doing those at home. And it's not very hard. Once you get like a good solid recipe that you know works for you, you can take it and adapt it into multiple other things. Like, actually had a comment the other day because I made pretzels with my son Jackson. We did a video of that, and someone commented that they had actually been using this bread recipe that they learned on my channel to make homemade pretzels. So you can take that dough and do a number of things with it. And I'll show you today the pivot that I do to take the same bread dough I'm making sandwich dough out of. So I know it makes a good dough. I know I like it. I know the recipe and know how to do it. But then I just treat it a little different after the first rise and make garlic knots for dinner. I have a couple pieces of bacon that were in this package that did not fit on the sheet pan when I cooked bacon this morning. So I'm gonna cut this up and put it in the meat sauce for the lasagna. I usually put some sort of pork like bacon or pancetta or something like that into my meat sauce for my lasagna, just to give that smokier flavor. And I usually do a mix of meat. So like today I went to the freezers, and of the meat that we raised, I got 2 packages of pork sausage and 1 package of ground beef, and I'll mix those together after I fry the bacon in the pan and take it out. So it will all have a little bit of the smoky flavor. I have put ground lamb in lasagna before also. I've done like the pork, beef, and lamb all together, and that's really good too, just having like all of those. It's definitely a lot going on, and I've only done that when I did the like whole shebang of like making everything from scratch, but it's very good. I like lasagna. I think you can make it lots of ways. I've made it without meat in it before. I've made it with veggies in it before. It's kind of one of those things that's sort of like an easy go-to. If I don't have certain ingredients, I know I can sub it with something and still make a, like, it's gonna be good no matter what. All right, it's been 10 minutes on this dough, and it's got some bubbles in it. It's not gonna be super foamy because obviously you have these other ingredients, but you can definitely see what's going on. I'm gonna turn this on, and then, so the recipe calls from between like 7 and 9 cups of flour. And I don't typically make this with whole wheat. So I'm assuming it's gonna be on the lower end of that. I'm just gonna add the flour till it looks right. So yeah, this came together and it's not sticky. It's 6.5 cups. The original recipe, I was wrong. I looked at it. It's 6.5 to 8.5 cups, not 7 to 9. But it's going to be on the lower end being whole wheat flour because it's just going to absorb more. But now I'm going to run this for like 4 or 5 minutes till it's nice and smooth. The meat's cooking behind me. I've got a big bowl. I'm going to spray this with some olive oil and put my dough in here to rise. It'll only take like 30 minutes. The kitchen's pretty warm right now. So I have 2 mixers. I have this Bosch mixer and I have a KitchenAid mixer. And this is the one thing about I really like the Bosch mixer. It's really nice. I actually originally bought it because we were making so much butter, and I would be tying up my mixer like all afternoon while I was in the kitchen with butter, and I would be trying to make other things. And so I got the Bosch specifically to make butter in because it has a cover on top, which makes it a lot better for that. Unfortunately, finding like an actual butter maker that makes larger volumes is pretty dang impossible now. You basically have to find some really old product and try to refurb it, or find one that's been refurbed, and they're very expensive. So I figured instead of getting something so specific, I would get something that could have some versatility. Anyway, the one drawback to this mixer is I don't really like letting things rise in here with that thing in the middle, because it can get, stuff will rise up and get stuck all in that. So I always put it in a separate bowl. Whereas the KitchenAid mixer, as long as I don't need the bowl for something else, I just do the rise in that bowl. I guess there is the benefit that usually getting this stuff out while it's fresh, I do clean things up a little easier. So there's that. Ben is getting a towel to put over this, a nice damp towel so the top of the dough does not dry out. Good job. So a little thing that I do a lot of times when I'm cooking, I felt like it would probably be better to have more than 2 packages of meat, but 3 was a little much. But I went ahead and thawed and cooked 3 packages, and I just took this one bowl of this cooked sausage and beef mix out, and I'm just gonna stick it in the fridge. Tomorrow, the next day, whatever, in the next couple of days, I will have a use for this. So like in the morning, I may make some like egg cups for breakfast, or a quiche. This is just the right amount of meat for that. I could take this and make a sauce and serve it over rice with some steamed veggies for like a, you know, like a teriyaki bowl or something like that. Since I'm cooking now, going ahead and getting this ready to use just saves me having to thaw things and cook them later. All right, this is ready. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 quarts of spaghetti sauce in here. Now, a lot of times when I'll make sauce, I just do like a big roaster of it with some like onions and garlic in it. And then when I use it in something, I can decide how much more flavor I want to add. So I'm going to get, I really would like some wine. This already has flavor. It's not just tomato sauce. This is like a spaghetti sauce. If I were going to be making this like from tomatoes, and if I were trying to like spend a little more time on it, I would have sauteed some onions and garlic, cooked them down, maybe even caramelized them a bit, and then put the tomatoes in and cooked that down to make a sauce, and then added my meat back into that. But the jarred sauce is great, and it's a good base, and I can just throw things in. And again, my goal today is good but also quick. All right, here's a little dried shallots, dried onion for good measure, garlic powder, and a bit of paprika. I need to turn the heat down because this is so high from browning meat. Benjamin is helping me by doing the dishes. I told him I was very kind. Here I've got some dried thyme, and I'm going to get some dried oregano also. So I really like having these small bottles of wine on hand. They're great for when you're cooking, or for when you just like want one glass or something like that. It's not like the best wine in the world, but it'll be good for this recipe. I'm just going to swish this around to get all the rest of this out of my jar. So about half of that. I'll stick this in the fridge and find somewhere else to use it this week. Now everything in this is now cooked, so I'm going to drop it down all the way to low to just let it simmer while I get my cheese mixture together. Yeah, babe?
I use this to clean the pan.
Yeah, you can clean the pan with that. Don't scrape it off. I almost forgot to put my bacon back in. Of course, I add a little bit of that bacon grease, which is going to add that smoky flavor, but we want the bits of bacon in it too. All right, I had to go run out to the garden, grab some parsley, and to get some eggs from the pantry. Look at these. Aren't those so pretty? Gorgeous. All right. As mentioned, I bought the ricotta for this. So for this part of the lasagna, we're mixing ricotta and mozzarella, and we put eggs in to bind it, to kind of help it solidify when it cooks, so that it's not watery. You want to do 1 egg to each 16-ounce cup of ricotta. A lot of times I do use homemade ricotta cheese and I just kind of round about it. It's not, you know, as long as you're getting it pretty close, it'll be fine. It'll set up good. And I usually do about equal parts. I have to actually mix it together to be able to tell you. I want to know something cool? Colorful egg layers. If you have chickens that lay colored eggs, the blue egg layers, that's like actually part of their genetics. That is the egg shell color. But brown egg layers, it's actually like dark brown. It's a spray on the outside, like if you have those really chocolate eggs. And so if you breed them together, you get chickens that lay eggs like this, which are like really olive on the outside but are blue on the inside. Isn't that cool? Fun farming fact for today. All right, I'm gonna mix these 2 eggs in with this ricotta. Now I've got 8 ounces of cheese, of mozzarella shredded here, and I feel like I'm gonna need more. So when I usually make lasagna, usually what I do, and I'm not really doing this today because I knew I was on a time crunch, I actually just usually make an obscene amount of this stuff. I mean, I get like my biggest pan out, make a huge pan of red sauce, meat sauce, and then I get like my big bowl and I'll have it completely full of this mixture. Yeah, we're gonna go with another 8 ounces. So 16, yeah, I wasn't thinking, because these are 16 ounces each. This is 32 ounces. I usually do at least half the mozzarella to the ricotta that I'm using, and sometimes even more than that. But when I make these like monster amounts of lasagna, I'll get several pans out. I'll put a pan in the freezer for later. You know, I have a couple friends I'll take, like I'll do bread pans and do lasagna for 2. You can just layer it in. I have before, just for kind of like a meal prep type thing, I've made like several bread pans and taken them to somebody, like, you know, like a couple that is having their first baby. You know, I can take them 3 lasagnas and, you know, they may not want to eat them all back to back, but over the course of the first 6 weeks of having a baby, eating that 3 times wouldn't be so bad. But if I have, because I don't really measure anything, and I just make a really big bowl of one part and a really big bowl of the other part and I put it together, if I have any excess, like if I have another 2 cups of filling that I don't end up needing as I lay all these things out, because I don't usually know exactly what pans I'm going to put it in. It's different every time. I'll just put it in a freezer bag and put it in the freezer with, you know, what we write on it is lasagna guts, so that's nice. But I won't write lasagna guts on it. It's obvious which part of the guts it is. If it's white, it's the cheese. If it's red, it's the sauce. And then the next time I make lasagna, I've got that in there and I just grab it out and, you know, add it to the mix. Or sometimes if I end up with a whole bunch of extra stuff, I'll freeze it and I have enough lasagna guts to make a whole new lasagna, and all I have to do is take it out and assemble everything, which is nice. All right, so I need to add some garlic powder, some black pepper, and some parsley to this. Garlic powder, I would say a couple tablespoons of that. Black pepper goes really nice with the tomato sauce. Yeah, some people cut really fast. I try. Get the stems out of that. Almost forgot. It would have still tasted good, but now it will taste better. That's about a cup of Parmesan, grated Parmesan. All right, now my parsley. How much of this is up to you? A handful, that's the official measure. It's probably about a quarter cup or so of diced up parsley. I usually do more if I'm using dried, because fresh is gonna have obviously a fresher flavor. I have more of this parsley because I'm gonna use that for my garlic knots. All right, let's start putting these lasagnas together. I purchased no boil pasta for this because I knew I was gonna be crunched on time. My friend Ruth Ann Zimmerman actually just put a video out a few days ago, and she does such a good job on her videos showing how to make pasta from scratch. It's not as hard as you may be thinking. If that's something that feels like a really advanced thing to you, making pasta from scratch is really not difficult. It's just a little more time consuming, obviously. If you're wanting to make like a wow factor lasagna and do all the things from scratch, that's one way, is by making the pasta from scratch. When it comes to buying pastas, there are pastas that you boil first and then you assemble, and then there are no boil pastas. And the no boil pastas, a lot of times, read the instructions, because some of them will tell you to add extra liquid to the pan, but some of them, like this one, says that no extra liquid is required. We're going to start by doing a thin layer on the bottom of our red sauce, and then we're going to lay out one single layer of the noodles. On the end, there's always noodles that just don't quite fit, so I just break pieces and stick them in. I usually use the side of the counter to do that and get close enough so that I have a mostly solid layer. And then on top of that, we're going to take our cheese mixture, drop it on. And there's really no better way than to get your hands dirty in doing this. I personally do not like crazy thick layers of, well, either thing. I think thinner layers and more of them makes for a better lasagna, but you typically are looking to do like 3 layers. Depending on your pan, you may only get 2 layers of pasta in, but I like to do I like to use a pan thick enough to get 3. All right, and then on top of this cheese layer, we do another layer of noodles. Actually flip that. I usually try to put the red sauce down on top of the cheese and then the noodles, because it's easier to spread the cheese on the noodles instead of the red sauce. It's okay, it doesn't matter. This one's going to be a little backwards, but if you make them in the it is easier. I flipped those around. Yeah, because on the bottom, red sauce, pasta, cheese, and then more red sauce, and then more pasta, and then more cheese. I got one layer mixed up, and we're just gonna run with it. It's completely okay. It's just gonna be a little blobby in here. Honestly, I probably should have made a little bit more of this cheese sauce, but I'm just gonna make theirs a little more substantial, and then the one I make for my family, I'll just do much thinner cheese layers, because they actually will complain if the cheese is like too thick. They don't like that. I know, you're right, my kid's complaining about cheese, but it'll work out just fine for that. But to get back on track, I'm actually going to put the cheese on top of this pasta and then the red sauce on top, so it's a little bit not alternating, but it's fine. Now you may be tempted to stack these layers all the way to the very brim of your pan. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Unless you love scrubbing your oven, don't do that. Because we are actually going to put a layer of cheese to melt on top. You do actually want to have a little bit of space. Alright, now on top of this, we're going to put our last layer of red sauce. And then I actually... I am kind of tempted to add more, but we're going to leave it like this. It's fine. This is enough food to feed their family plenty, so it'll be okay. That needs more cheese. This is just some more mozzarella on top. Fresh parsley. Now, to stick it in the oven, you could cover it with foil. I have this handy lid. This is going to 375-degree oven for like an hour. Now it's only 4:30 in the evening, so it's not time to put this in the oven for my family for dinner, but I'm going to go ahead and put it together so I can get these dishes clean and out of the way. Benjamin asked me to leave the melty top cheese mostly off of one corner for him, so I said, okay, son. Alright, while that cooks, let us make garlic knots. There's our dough, nice and risen. I'm going to turn this out here to this board, form this into a nice long loaf shape. Alright, now I'm just going to take this and cut it into little strips. I have a stoneware pan right here that I'm going to bake it on. Those are relatively non-stick, but I am going to give it a little spray of oil. You can use a silicone baking mat for this. Another thing I've seen is where people tie these into knots and then they put them in muffin tins, which is kind of cool, but this is just how I like to do it. I think some of these are a little on the big side. Yeah. Maybe like a 8-10 inch or so little rope, and then we're going to take it and tie it into a knot just like this, and you can just set it on the pan like this, or if you want them to be like more soft and chewy and not, if you don't like crispier bits, tuck those ends under so it just looks just like this. I'm going to repeat this. Some of these are a little on the thick side, so I'll cut it off and add them together. Alright, I just ran down to the garden, got a couple carrots, got some kale, and a lovely head of broccoli, and we're going to put together a quick salad with this. I employed Sweet Maya. She's here crushing garlic for me to melt some butter into.
Crushing it.
You are crushing it. I just stuck some butter in the bowl with that garlic, and I'm just microwaving it for like 30 seconds at a time. I'm going to tear this washed kale. I've got this on a towel here. These carrots are just making me so happy. It's actually my first carrots to harvest this year. Well, yeah, this year. I was going to say maybe this season, but no, at this point it is 2025. We are in a new year. I've still been writing 2024 on everything. So I'm just tearing this up, making sure I don't put any big stems in here. And then we're going to massage the kale, because the kale is high maintenance. It's not. And neither am I, and I love a good massage. Kale's fibrous, and so if you're going to eat it raw, like massaging it with oil or lemon juice or both, breaks it down and makes it like nice and soft, and it lets it release its juices, makes it a lot easier to eat. I'm making a royal mess of my kitchen. Thankfully Ben came and did some dishes, so the cleanup won't be so bad. On these rolls, as you can see, they've doubled in size just sitting here for 20 minutes or so. Let me stir up this butter and garlic mixture, and I'm going to brush this on to all of these very generously. We want it to kind of seep down in the cracks, and make sure if you've got this crushed garlic, you're kind of scooping from the bottom to make sure you're getting the garlic on each roll, not just dipping butter onto them. Okay, and I'm gonna sprinkle some, I've got some big thick chunky salt. It's actually molded like flake salt. I'm gonna put that on top of these, just a little sprinkle of that. And then some of that fresh parsley diced up nice and small. Well, sort of small. Some parts I guess aren't quite as small. Okay, I'm gonna stick these in the oven. One benefit of the cold weather that we've been having is that there are no creepy crawlies hiding in the vegetables. You know, I typically will soak things in the spring when I bring them in from the garden, because it just happens, you know, and you can wash them and try to scrub them, but you may miss one. And I know for some people that really freaks you out, but I'm kind of the mind, and I've always said real food comes dirty, and sometimes it has bugs on it. I'm kind of the mind, if bugs want to eat it, it probably is a sign that it's good stuff. So much of the food that we're used to seeing when we go in grocery stores is just so sterile, and we never see anything like that because there's been a lot of stuff sprayed on it. So I appreciate my garden food, even though I'm not a person that loves bugs. Like, I actually do not have a high tolerance for that, and so when I find them on there, I still get really grossed out. And I don't love the freezing temperatures. I don't love, you know, being limited in what I can grow, but I do love that I don't get surprised by anything in my food. All right, so on this salad, we're gonna go ahead and get a good drizzle of olive oil on here. My friend Betsy smuggled a bag of lemons, so they weren't smuggled, it's allowed, or else she would not have gotten on the airplane. She carried a bag of lemons as her carry-on from California for me. This is the second year in a row she's done that. It's a good friend. Get you a friend that transports their backyard produce for you across the country. All right, so I'm gonna squeeze this lemon on here, try to pick the seeds out. That was a good juicy one. All right, now I'm gonna get in here and just start squeezing and massaging this kale. And as I do that, I mean, it breaks down pretty quick. You're gonna have significantly less than you started with. You don't have to do it a ton, just till it looks kind of good and bruised. All right, I got a handful of raisins. I buy these bulk, which I just dug them out of a big box. Got some pine nuts left over from Thanksgiving, so that'll be fancy. On those rolls, I've got a whole nother batch to do. So that bread recipe is for 2 loaves, and so I did the whole recipe since I was making rolls for their family and my family. So the other batch is probably gonna be a little more risen because obviously it was sitting out longer. But so when I made that butter and garlic and I've got all that parsley chopped, it was for both batches. All right, I'm gonna cut these carrots in half and then cut them just real thin. So we got some nice small slices. Nothing that's gonna be super rough on a tooth if they get bit into. Now these carrots being just pulled out of the dirt, they're nice and soft. They harden up more in storage. Oh, look at that, that's cool. I cannot remember what variety this is. I think it was called, it's not Cosmic Purple. Cosmic Purple has an orange inside. And I don't think this is Nebula. That one's solid purple. I can't remember what it is. I think it was a hybrid. That's probably why I don't remember it. Raisins, kale, broccoli. With this broccoli, I'm gonna start kind of slicing and see where we get with it. So I just do this over because all the little bits that come off, I mean, that's fine. It's just going in the salad. Now, a couple of big florets came off in that. I'm just going to tear those up or pull them out and slice them a little thinner so that it's more kind of the texture. I don't want any massive chunks of anything. I want people to be able to take a bite of this and get like a mixture of stuff on their fork. All the good stuff's falling down to the bottom. I actually think this could use a little citrus, so I just have a little clementine here. And I'm going to peel it and just throw the segments in whole. Alright, so I left a couple servings of salad in this bowl that I'm going to leave here for my crew. And then I moved the majority of it over here to take my friends. Maya's probably the only one that will eat that and enjoy it. Normally, when I'm taking food for people in these situations, I try to buy throwaway pans. I completely forgot on this. It'll be okay, but I wish that I had thought of doing that because I don't want to burden people with a bunch of dishes to do. However, they are sitting down like with the whole family and eating dinner, so maybe it won't be that big a deal. Now, in a mason jar, I'm going to do some blackberry ginger vinegar and some olive oil. Let's throw a little thyme in this. Some of the fresh parsley. Needs salt. Alright, well Maya did find one throwaway pan for me, so that's good. So I've got garlic knots. With the whole wheat, these are a little dense. I probably should have made them smaller, but it's fine. I mean, it's fresh baked bread. Salad and the lasagna. Oh, and the dressing. So I'm going to wrap this up, put it in the car, and Maya is going to cook. We'll stick these in the oven and set a timer, and then there's our lasagna for our house. Thanks for your help.
I didn't do that much, but I did crush it.
Thank you guys for hanging out with me today in the kitchen. Always glad to keep you company while you cook. I bless you. Until next time.